I was standing in my daughter's hospital room, surrounded by flowers that would never bring her back, when my phone rang. It was the estate sale company I'd hired to clear out her townhouse. "Mr. Harrison, you need to come to the property right now." The woman's voice was shaking. "And sir, don't come alone. Bring your son-in-law with you. He needs to see this." My hands went cold. "What did you find? Just come, please." 20 minutes later, I pulled up to Sarah's townhouse with my son-in-law Marcus in the passenger seat. He'd been quiet the whole drive, which wasn't unusual. Marcus had always been reserved, even during the 7 years he was married to my daughter. But today, his silence felt different, heavier. The estate sale woman, Patricia, met us at the door. Her face was pale. "It's in the nursery," she said. The room she was getting ready. Sarah had been 5 months pregnant when the car accident took her. The nursery was supposed to be a surprise. She'd been working on it in secret, planning to reveal it to Marcus on their anniversary next month. I'd only known about it because she'd asked me to help her pick out a crib during one of our lunch dates. Patricia led us upstairs. The nursery door was open, and I could see the cheerful yellow walls Sarah had painted herself. But Patricia walked past it, stopping instead at the linen closet in the hallway. "We were clearing out the shelves when we found this," she said, pulling back a false panel in the back of the closet. Behind it was a small safe, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. But it was what was taped to the top of the safe that made my blood run cold. A yellow sticky note, in Sarah's handwriting. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. The code is your birthday. Show Marcus everything inside, but record his reaction. I need you to see the truth. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. My birthday, 08-15,000-1961. My fingers trembled as I entered the code. Marcus stood behind me, and I could feel his eyes burning into my back. The safe opened. Inside were 3 items: a spiral notebook, a thumb drive, and a small Ziploc bag containing what looked like medication. I picked up the notebook first. Sarah's handwriting filled the pages, and as I began to read, my heart shattered all over again. March 3rd. Marcus gave me tea tonight. Said it would help with the pregnancy fatigue. I fell asleep for 14 hours. Missed work. This is the 4th time this month. March 17th. Found bottle of Ambien in Marcus's gym bag. The prescription is in someone else's name. Dr. Richard Foster. I looked him up. He's not a real doctor. The license number is fake. April 2nd. I'm starting to have gaps in my memory. Yesterday, Marcus said I'd agreed to name him beneficiary on my new life insurance policy. I don't remember that conversation. The policy is for $2 million. April 15th. I hired a private investigator. Her name is Jennifer Chen. I'm paying her in cash. Marcus can't know. The entries went on. Page after page of my daughter documenting her own husband slowly poisoning her, testing her, manipulating her. The final entry was dated 3 days before the accident. May 1st. Jennifer confirmed it. Marcus has done this before. His first wife, Andrea, died in a car accident 2 years before he met me. $2 million life insurance payout. The police ruled it an accident, but Jennifer found the mechanic who worked on Andrea's car the week before she died. Someone had tampered with the brake lines, but the mechanic was paid to keep quiet. The same mechanic serviced my car last week. Jennifer has the evidence. Everything is on the thumb drive. Dad, if you're reading this, please, don't let him get away with it again. I'm going to confront him tonight. I'm going to tell him I want a divorce. But if something happens to me, you'll know why. I love you. Daddy. I closed the notebook. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold it. What does it say? Marcus asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up the Ziploc bag. Inside were several pills and a handwritten label. From Marcus's tea, collected March-April. Tested positive for Ambien and small amounts of antifreeze. Do not consume. My daughter had been collecting evidence of her own murder. Mr. Harrison, what's in the bag? Marcus's voice had an edge to it now. I looked at Patricia. Call 911. Tell them we need police here immediately. Don't do that, Marcus said. It wasn't a request. I turned to face my son-in-law for the first time since we'd opened the safe. His expression had changed. The mask of the grieving widower was gone. What I saw instead was cold calculation. "You killed her," I said. "You killed my daughter." Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Prove it," he said. That smile, that arrogant, entitled smile. It was the same smile he'd worn at Sarah's funeral when people offered their condolences. The same smile he'd worn when he'd asked me, just 2 weeks ago, if I knew when Sarah's life insurance would pay out. "The thumb drive?" I said. "It has everything. Then I guess I'll need to take that," Marcus said, stepping toward me. But I was already moving backward, pulling out my phone. "I'm not as stupid as you think I am." I started recording the moment we walked into this house. "Everything you just said is on video, and I already texted the thumb drive contents to my lawyer before we even opened the safe. That last part was a lie, but Marcus didn't need to know that." His face went white. Patricia had already dialed 911. I could hear her in the hallway, voice shaking as she spoke to the dispatcher. "Please hurry. I think he's going to run." Marcus looked at the door, then back at me. I could see him calculating his odds. "You were going to get away with it," I said. My voice was steady now, even though everything inside me was screaming. "You killed your first wife. You were killing my daughter slowly, and when that wasn't working fast enough, you sabotaged her car, and you would have walked away with $2 million and everyone's sympathy." "You can't prove any of that," Marcus said, but his voice was shaking now. "The private investigator Sarah hired, Jennifer Chen, I called her this morning, right after Patricia contacted me. She's been waiting for this. She has statements from the mechanic. She has Andrea's medical records showing the same pattern of drugging. She has everything. She has everything." I hadn't called anyone that morning. But again, Marcus didn't need to know that. "Sarah was going to leave you," I continued. "She figured it out. That's why you had to act fast. The car accident couldn't wait. She was going to take everything," Marcus said. The words came out before he could stop them. The house, the savings, the investments, all of it. 7 years I spent building that life, and she was going to walk away with half of everything because of some prenup loophole her lawyer found. And then she got pregnant, and suddenly she wanted to renegotiate. Said she wanted to make sure the baby was protected. Protected from me, like I was some kind of threat. He was talking faster now, the words spilling out. "So yes, I gave her something to help her sleep. Something to make her a little confused, a little forgetful. Just enough that she'd sign the new beneficiary paperwork without reading it too carefully. I wasn't trying to kill her. Not at first. But then she started asking questions," I said. "She hired that investigator. Started watching me. I couldn't let her expose me. Andrea was supposed to be the end of it. One mistake, one accident, and I'd have enough money to start over somewhere else. But Andrea's family contested the will, tied everything up in probate for 2 years. By the time I got the money, it was barely worth it. So I met Sarah. Sweet. Trusting Sarah with her trust fund and her successful career and her life insurance through work. It was perfect." The sound of sirens cut through the air. Marcus's head snapped toward the window. "You set me up." "No," I said. "Sarah set you up. She knew what you were. She documented everything. She made sure that even if you killed her, you wouldn't get away with it. My daughter was smarter than both of us." The police burst through the door 30 seconds later. Patricia had propped it open, and they'd heard enough of Marcus's confession through her phone line to know exactly what they were dealing with. Marcus tried to run. He made it 3 steps before an officer tackled him to the ground. They read him his rights while he struggled. I watched, the notebook still clutched in my hands, and I thought about Sarah, about how she'd spent the last weeks of her life knowing she was in danger but still collecting evidence, still making sure that justice would be served. She'd known she might not survive, but she'd made damn sure Marcus wouldn't either. The detective who took my statement was a woman named Rodriguez. She'd worked cases like this before, she told me. Husbands who killed wives for insurance money. The number was higher than most people thought. "Your daughter was careful," Rodriguez said, looking through the contents of the safe. "Most victims don't see it coming until it's too late. She must have had good instincts." "She had her mother's instincts," I said. "My wife had passed away from cancer 10 years earlier. but she'd always been the one who could read people. Sarah had inherited that gift. The thumb drive contained everything Sarah had promised. Video footage from a hidden camera she'd installed in their bedroom, showing Marcus crushing pills into her evening tea. Bank statements showing Marcus had taken out additional life insurance policies in Sarah's name without her knowledge. Text messages between Marcus and Dr. Richard Foster, whose real name was Richard Foster but who'd lost his medical license 5 years earlier for insurance fraud. Foster had been providing Marcus with prescription medications in exchange for cash. The mechanic who'd worked on Sarah's car was named Tommy Reeves. Jennifer Chen had tracked him down in Nevada, where he'd moved after Andrea's death. He'd kept records, photographs of the brake work he'd done on Andrea's car and then on Sarah's. He'd been too scared to come forward at the time, but he'd kept the evidence just in case. With his testimony, the police were able to reopen Andrea's case as well. The trial took 8 months. Marcus pleaded not guilty, claimed the confession I'd recorded was coerced, that he'd been in shock and didn't know what he was saying. His lawyer argued that Sarah's journal entries were paranoid delusions, that the Ambien in her tea was a misunderstanding, that the car accident was just that. An accident. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. Guilty on multiple counts of insurance fraud. Guilty on attempted murder for the poisoning attempts on Sarah before the car accident. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. I attended every day of the trial. I owed that to Sarah. I owed it to her to sit there and watch as the man who'd killed her was held accountable for what he'd done. On the day of sentencing, the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I'd prepared something the night before. But when I stood up, the words I'd written seemed inadequate. Instead, I pulled out Sarah's journal and read from the last entry. Dad, if you're reading this, please, don't let him get away with it again. I love you, Daddy. My voice broke on the last word. I looked at Marcus, sitting at the defense table in his pressed suit, and I saw nothing. No remorse. No recognition of what he'd done. Just the same cold calculation I'd seen in Sarah's nursery. My daughter knew she was in danger, I told the judge. She knew that the man she'd married, the man she'd trusted, was going to kill her, and she still found the courage to document everything, to leave behind the evidence that would convict him. Sarah was 29 years old. She was going to be a mother. She had her whole life ahead of her. And Marcus took that away because of greed, because $2 million was more important to him than my daughter's life. I folded the journal closed. Your Honor, I'm not asking for mercy for this man. I'm asking for justice. The same justice my daughter fought for in her final weeks. She deserves that much. The judge nodded. Mr. Harrison, I want you to know that I've presided over many difficult cases in my career, but few have affected me as deeply as this one. Your daughter's courage in documenting her own murder, her foresight in protecting the evidence, and her determination to ensure justice was served even after death. These things speak to an extraordinary young woman. I'm deeply sorry for your loss. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Foster, you have shown yourself to be a calculating, remorseless individual who views human life as nothing more than a means to financial gain. You murdered your first wife and got away with it. You attempted to murder your second wife through poisoning, and when that proved too slow, you sabotaged her vehicle, causing her death and the death of her unborn child. The evidence against you is overwhelming, and the jury has found you guilty on all counts. I hereby sentence you to 2 consecutive life sentences, without the possibility of parole. Marcus showed no reaction. He simply stood when the bailiff came to take him away and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. After the trial, I met with Jennifer Chen, the private investigator Sarah had hired. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Your daughter was one of the smartest clients I've ever worked with, she told me. Most people who suspect their spouse is trying to kill them, they confront them immediately. They get emotional. But Sarah, she understood that she needed proof. She understood that without evidence, Marcus would walk away free. She told you she was going to confront him, I said. The last journal entry, she said she was going to ask for a divorce. Jennifer nodded. She called me that night, told me she couldn't wait anymore, that she had to end things before the baby came. I begged her to wait, to let me get more evidence, to go to the police. But she said she'd been living in fear for too long. She wanted to take back control of her life, and Marcus killed her for it. He sabotaged her car that same night. While she was asleep, he went into the garage and cut the brake lines. The accident happened the next morning, on her way to work. I'd heard the details before, during the trial, but hearing them again still made me sick. I should have known, I said. I'm her father. I should have seen the signs. Mr. Harrison, abusers like Marcus are experts at hiding their true nature. Sarah was a trained attorney. She was smart, observant, and careful. And even she didn't realize what he was doing until months into the poisoning. Don't blame yourself for not seeing what he worked so hard to conceal. But I did blame myself. Every day, I wondered what I could have done differently, what signs I'd missed, whether Sarah had tried to tell me, and I'd been too blind to see. The life insurance money, the $2 million Marcus had killed for, was eventually paid out to Sarah's estate. As her only living relative, it came to me. I couldn't touch it. The thought of spending money that Sarah had died for made me physically ill. Instead, I established a foundation in her name. The Sarah Harrison Foundation for Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention. We work with private investigators to provide free services to people who suspect their partners are trying to harm them. We fund legal representation for victims. We train law enforcement on the warning signs of intimate partner homicide. In the first year alone, we helped 43 people escape dangerous situations. 3 of them had partners who, like Marcus, had killed before. I also started speaking publicly about Sarah's case. I went to law schools, police academies, women's shelters. I told Sarah's story over and over, hoping that somewhere, someone would hear it and recognize the signs in their own life. One woman approached me after a presentation at a community center in Phoenix. She was in her mid-40s, well-dressed, articulate. My husband started giving me tea 6 months ago, she told me. He said it would help with my migraines. But I've been sleeping more and more, and I've been forgetting things. Little things at first, then bigger things. Last week, I found out he'd taken out a life insurance policy in my name. He said it was for our retirement, but I didn't remember agreeing to it. I helped her contact Jennifer Chen that same day. Within 2 weeks, they had enough evidence to go to the police. The husband was arrested for attempted murder and insurance fraud. The woman divorced him and moved across the country to start over. She sends me a card every Christmas. This year, it included a photo of her with her new partner and a note. Sarah saved my life. Thank you for sharing her story. That's when I know I'm doing the right thing. That's when Sarah's death feels like it meant something beyond just tragedy. But there are still hard days. Days when I walk past her old bedroom in my house and remember her as a little girl, reading under the covers with a flashlight. Days when I see pregnant women in the grocery store and think about the grandchild I'll never meet. Days when I wonder what kind of man I raised Sarah to be with, that she would choose someone like Marcus. My therapist tells me that's normal. Grief, she says, isn't linear. It comes in waves, and sometimes those waves knock you down when you least expect it. I've learned to ride them out. 3 years after Marcus's conviction, I received a letter from him. It had been opened and read by prison officials before being forwarded to me, and there was a note attached saying I didn't have to read it if I didn't want to. I read it. It was 2 pages long, handwritten on lined paper. Marcus's handwriting was still neat, precise, controlled. He didn't apologize. Instead, he wanted me to know that he'd found God in prison, that he'd been reflecting on his actions, that he understood now what he'd done was wrong. He asked for my forgiveness. The letter ended with a Bible verse and a request that I write back. I burned it. I don't believe in Marcus's redemption. I don't believe that finding God in a prison cell erases 2 murders and an unborn child. I don't believe he deserves my forgiveness, and I don't believe Sarah would want me to give it. Some things can't be forgiven. Some people don't deserve second chances. Marcus is one of them. Instead, I focus on the work, the foundation, the speaking engagements, the people we help. Last month, we funded a new initiative to train medical professionals on recognizing the signs of slow poisoning. It turns out that Sarah's case wasn't unique. There are dozens of documented cases every year where partners use prescription medications, household chemicals, or other substances to slowly incapacitate their victims before administering the final, fatal dose or staging an accident. Most of them get away with it because the symptoms mimic other conditions: fatigue, memory loss, confusion. These can all be attributed to stress, depression, or other medical issues. Unless someone is specifically looking for poisoning, it often goes undetected. Sarah's journal, her careful documentation of symptoms and medications, helped us develop a checklist that medical professionals can use to identify potential poisoning cases. It's already been adopted by 3 major hospital systems and has led to 2 arrests. My daughter is still saving lives, even though she's gone. On the 4th anniversary of Sarah's death, I visited her grave for the first time since the funeral. I'd avoided it before, unable to face the reality of her buried in the ground. But that day, I brought flowers, yellow roses, her favorite, and I sat on the grass beside her headstone. "I hope I'm making you proud," I told her. "I hope the foundation is what you would have wanted. I hope you know that you didn't die for nothing." The wind picked up, rustling the trees around the cemetery, and for just a moment, I could swear I heard her laugh, the same bright, musical laugh she'd had as a child. I stayed until sunset, telling her about the people we'd helped, the lives we'd saved. I told her about the woman in Phoenix, and the medical initiative, and the new legislation we were working on to make it easier to prosecute poisoning cases. I told her that Marcus would never hurt anyone again, and I told her that I loved her, that I missed her every single day, and that I would make sure her name lived on long after mine was forgotten. When I finally left the cemetery, I felt lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying Sarah's journal around in my chest for 4 years, and I'd finally been able to set it down. The work continues. The foundation grows. We help more people every year. And every time we save someone, every time we help a person escape a dangerous situation or recognize the warning signs before it's too late, I think about Sarah in that nursery, painting the walls yellow for a baby she'd never meet, documenting evidence for a father who would have to live without her. She fought for her own justice when she knew she might not survive to see it. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure that fight wasn't in vain. That's what fathers do. We protect our daughters, even after they're gone, especially after they're gone.